The Millennium, a prophetic forecast by Johanna Brandt. Chapter 4, The Mystic Period, continued. Martyrdom. The conversion of St. Paul, which on one hand had proved of such stupendous importance in the growth and preservation of Christianity, on the other fanned the spark of persecution in an all-consuming blaze, which raged with inconceivable fury during the next 200 years. The systematic persecution of the Christians, which had been begun under Paul and by Paul, was now directed against him by his former fellow believers, the Jews. And we have seen in the former chapter how he suffered at the hands of his enemies for many years, until he met his fate under one of the most bloodthirsty men known to history, the Roman Emperor Nero. If we are indeed sincere in our endeavors to grasp the power of a faith which bears men unshaken through tortures, of which the modern mind can form no conception, let us examine these tortures for a moment. Let us face them unflinchingly in all their bloody nakedness. Just for a moment. We shall not harrow our leaders' feelings unnecessarily, nor dwell an instant longer than we can help on the excruciating theme. In the earliest days of the apostles, the actual death sentence was seldom passed, but history tells us that many Christians died of the results of tortures inflicted. Many died through torture. Think for a moment what that means, what those words convey to the receptive mind. We know that men die hard. What then could have been the methods employed which ended in death, where death was not intended, nay, more where actual death was avoided, as much as possible, as an unsatisfactory termination of the escaping victim's martyrdom? Death made a saint and a hero of him, and death was put off until all other methods had been tried. The dungeons in which the Christian prisoners languished for weeks and months, sometimes even for years, a lifetime, were so damp that the floors and walls were covered with green and stinking slime, and the chill atmosphere, stifling in summer, was pest-laden with the effluvia of many impure bodies. Here the pangs of hunger and thirst were endured by men, women, and little children until death threatened to release them from their agonies, when they would be laved with food and drink, sufficient to prepare them for renewed tortures in another form. The breaking of their bones one by one, the drawing of their teeth and of the nails of hands and feet, the cutting out of tongues, the putting out of eyes, the flaying of their bodies, or the burning with hot irons and boiling oil, the partial roasting on gigantic gridirons, the freezing by exposure on ice. These and many other forms of torture they suffered, inconceivably horrible, utterly cruel, the very thought of which makes the blood run cold and the heart stand still with fear. The mental strain put on these sufferers must have been immeasurably greater than the physical agony, for they had it in their own hands to make an end to the horrors of their situation at any time. One word from them brought instant relief, and I do not doubt that that word was wrung 1,000 times from tortured lips that could endure no more. I do not know the man. Matthew 26, verse 72. When all other methods had failed to bring about the denial of Jesus Christ as the Messiah, the victims were done to death, secretly at first, but as time went on and the cases became more frequent, by public execution. Released from their chains, they were brought into the fresh air at last to conquer the last enemy, death, under the open sky. Some were flogged to death in places of public amusement. Others were stoned and thrown half dead outside the city walls, to be torn to pieces and devoured by wild dogs. Many were crucified, by the way, in token of that shameful death on Golgotha. And when the people wearied of this form of entertainment, their victims were frequently crucified head downwards. In the days of that inhuman monster, Nero, public executions became the order of the day and were maintained by his successors for over 100 years. For the Christians had to be punished for every national disaster with which the Roman Empire was visited. Conflagrations, droughts, storms, and pestilence, all were the result of the wrath of insulted heathen gods, which had to be appeased with the blood of the worshippers of the only God.